The greatest frustration for any gardener is staring at a patch of soil that looks more like lifeless dust than fertile ground. Many give up, thinking that soil revival takes expensive amendments or years of waiting. But what if the most powerful tool for transformation was already in your kitchen bin? What if the carrot peels, eggshells, coffee grounds, and cabbage cores you throw away every day could be buried in the dead earth and bring it back to life? We set out to track exactly how long it takes for buried kitchen scraps to turn sterile ground into thriving living soil, and the results might change the way you garden forever. By the end of this, you will know not only why this works, but also how to apply it step by step in your own beds for a lazy but genius revival method. Before understanding the transformation, it's important to set the scene. Dead soil is not just dry dirt. It is compacted, nutrient-starved, and nearly devoid of microbial and worm activity. When we buried our kitchen scraps, the ground was hard and resistant to shovels, with a grayish, dusty texture and very little smell of life. If you've ever had clay soil that cracks in the sun or sandy soil that refuses to hold water, you know the challenge. The key principle here is that soil revival requires organic matter in contact with microbes. Without that, nothing shifts. Kitchen scraps provide that organic fuel in the most direct way possible. Within the first 7 days of burying scraps, something subtle but important begins. As the vegetable matter breaks down, it heats up, creating a micro-composting zone underground. Even in soil that seemed lifeless, bacteria that were dormant spring into action. The smell at this stage, if you dig back into the trench, is sour and slightly pungent, showing that fermentation is underway. Worms are not yet present in large numbers, but ants and small soil insects begin scouting the new food source. If you are trying this yourself, just dig a trench about a foot deep, lay down 4 to 6 inches of mixed scraps, cover them with equal soil, and tamp it down lightly. This seals in the process and, prevents surface pests from taking over. After about 4 weeks, the change becomes noticeable. The once compacted soil directly above the trench, it really starts to soften up. Worms, which might have been totally absent before, start moving in, drawn by the moisture and the partial breakdown of the scraps. Fungal threads appear as these thin white networks weaving through the soil, and that's a sign that higher soil organisms are joining the process. At this point, the smell is less sour and more earthy. In our tracked bed, coffee grounds and fruit peels were almost gone. Eggshells were still visible, and fibrous vegetable matter like cabbage cores was just beginning to soften. This is the first true sign that dead soil is beginning to become living earth. By the second month, the most dramatic shift occurs. The soil, which used to be kind of gray, now starts to take on this richer brown tone. Its structure also becomes looser and honestly way easier to work with. Worm populations really multiply quickly, and they leave behind these casts that enrich the soil with nitrogen and all sorts of trace minerals. Microbial activity just skyrockets, so those buried scraps are no longer visible as recognizable food. Instead, they're now fully integrated into the soil as this humus-like material. So, this humus is really the key to long-term fertility, because it both holds water and provides a reservoir of nutrients. In our test plot, a handful of soil at 60 days was noticeably darker, smelled fresh and earthy, and crumbled in the hand instead of forming a lifeless lump. For gardeners, this is the sign that your ground is now ready to support roots again. At the 90-day point, the buried scraps have almost completely disappeared. The bed is teeming with worms, beetles, and other beneficial life. The soil is darker, smells like a forest floor, and it retains moisture even during dry spells. At this stage, you can plant directly into the bed, and seedlings will thrive with minimal added fertilizer. In our tracked experiment, we planted beans into the revived section, and within 2 weeks they germinated stronger and greener than those in untreated soil nearby. What started as dead, compacted ground was now a thriving living system, transformed almost entirely by waste that would otherwise have been thrown away. While kitchen scraps alone work wonders, we found that adding one secret ingredient cut the timeline nearly in half. A small amount of molasses diluted in water. By pouring a mix of 1 tablespoon of molasses into a gallon of water over the trench after burial, microbial activity skyrocketed. The sugars acted as instant food for bacteria, which in turn sped up decomposition of the scraps and attracted worms faster. Within 1 month, the soil looked as if it had been treated for 2 months, and by 60 days it was already supporting new plant growth. So gardeners can easily apply this trick, since molasses is inexpensive, shelf-stable, and totally safe. Even if you don't have molasses on hand, the process still works, but with it, the revival becomes, visibly faster and more dramatic. The method is honestly pretty simple, but precision really does matter. Start by digging a trench that's about 12 inches deep and at least 8 inches wide. Alright, so go ahead and fill the bottom with about 4 to 6 inches of kitchen scraps. These should be mixed. Fruit peels, vegetable cores, coffee grounds, and eggshells are just excellent choices. But it's important to avoid meat, dairy, and large amounts of oily food since these can attract pests. Once the scraps are in, just cover them up with about 6 inches of soil. If you wish, go ahead and pour the diluted molasses water over the top before closing the trench completely. Tamp it down gently and leave it undisturbed. Check progress at about 1 month by probing with a fork or shovel. After 3 months, test the soil texture and smell. You will find the transformation complete and the bed ready for planting. For continuous fertility, rotate your trench placement, adding new strips of buried scraps across your garden over time. Many gardeners are tempted to purchase bags of compost, chemical fertilizers, or soil conditioners to revive dead soil. While these can give short-term results, they often do not rebuild the living web beneath the surface. Buried kitchen scraps, however, rebuild soil from the ground up. They bring in worms, fungi, and microbes naturally and create humus that holds both air and water. The process is slow but steady, requiring almost no effort after the initial burial. This makes it, honestly, one of the laziest yet most genius ways to turn unworkable dirt into thriving garden soil. The beauty is that it costs nothing more than what you would otherwise throw away, making it both sustainable and endlessly repeatable. The lesson from this experiment is simple but profound. Dead soil does not have to stay dead. By burying kitchen scraps directly into the ground and letting time, worms, and microbes do the work, even the most compacted and lifeless soil can be revived in as little as 3 months. Add a boost of molasses and you can cut that time down further. This lazy yet effective method gives gardeners a powerful tool to restore fertility without backbreaking labor or costly inputs. If you care about building long-term soil health, this is a practice worth repeating in your own garden beds. If this guide has given you practical knowledge you can apply right away, don't forget to subscribe to Soil and Plant Doctor and share this video with other gardeners who need to hear that soil revival is possible without expensive tricks. Together, we can bring life back to the ground beneath our feet.